It was an ordinary Sunday, quiet, uneventful. The smell of clean laundry lingered in the air. Coffee steamed between us, and soft music played from her phone. We were folding clothes together, sharing one of those peaceful domestic moments that usually feel warm and grounding. That's when she said it, so casually, like she was commenting on the weather. Sometimes I think I should have ended up with Daniel instead. At first, I thought I'd misheard her. I waited for a laugh, a grin, something that told me she was joking. But nothing came. She just kept folding a towel, her eyes on the fabric, her voice calm, like she was speaking to herself more than to me. "What did you say?" I asked, my voice quiet but sharp. She looked up unfazed. "I just think maybe life would have been easier. He made me feel seen. He had ambition. He didn't settle like this." She gestured vaguely around us, our home, our life, as if all we had built was something small, something insufficient. I didn't argue. I didn't speak. I felt something tighten inside me, a slow, twisting ache I couldn't name. I walked away, went downstairs, trying to convince myself I was overreacting or imagining things. But she didn't come after me. She didn't try to explain. There was no softening of her words. No, I didn't mean it that way. Nothing. That night, I stayed on the couch. Not because she asked, but because it felt impossible to lie beside someone who had made me feel so replaceable. I lay there wondering how often she had silently compared me to a man who hadn't been in her life for years. Daniel, the guy from her past, from college, the one with charm and swagger, who had promised big things and then disappeared for a job overseas, leaving her heartbroken and lost. I was the one who held her back then. And now, all these years later, she was still wondering what life with him might have been like. Something shifted in me after that. I became quieter. I buried myself in work, started coming home later. Sometimes I sat in the car for a while before going inside, needing time to brace myself for the silence waiting beyond the front door. She noticed, of course, asked me if something was wrong. I'd just say, "I'm fine," but I wasn't. I was retreating, bit by bit, behind an emotional wall. I stopped telling her about my day, stopped sharing the little things that used to matter. Our dinners grew colder, not in temperature, but in tone. We weren't fighting. We just weren't connecting. We sat across from each other like strangers. And always, Daniel hovered in the background like a ghost I couldn't shake. Then came the night she came home late. No message, no excuse, just hours gone. When she finally walked through the door, she looked anxious, like she had something to hide. "I ran into an old friend," she said carefully. "We had drinks." "Was it him?" I asked. She nodded. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I just quietly packed a small bag, not out of anger, but because I knew there was nothing left for me to hold on to. Before I left, I said, "Maybe you need to figure out what you really want." She looked like she wanted to respond, but I stopped her. "I'm not mad," I told her. "I'm just done." I left without drama, stayed with a friend at first, then found a place of my own. She called a few times, sent a message trying to explain, said her words came out wrong. I didn't answer, and in the silence that followed, something unexpected happened. I felt lighter. There was loneliness, yes, but there was also relief. I started waking up early, going for runs, cooking for myself. I began to remember who I was before I bent myself into the shape she needed. I saw how much of myself I'd lost trying to be enough for someone who had always kept part of herself somewhere else. Eventually, I filed for separation. No bitterness, just clarity. We both needed the space. Then, out of the blue, she came to my door. She looked different, tired, like someone who'd been through something. She told me she'd seen Daniel again. They didn't speak, just passed each other. And she realized he hadn't changed. Still charming, still chasing things that slipped through his fingers. She looked at me then, her eyes wet with tears. "I was wrong," she said. "I thought I wanted excitement. I wanted to feel chosen. But what we had, that was real. You showed up, you stayed. And I destroyed that. I believed her. I really did. But some truths come too late, because by the time someone finally sees your worth, you might already have learned how to stop needing their approval. I didn't hate her. I couldn't. But I wasn't the man who had stood in that kitchen months earlier, wounded and waiting. I had grown. I had healed. And I wasn't willing to go back to the version of myself who thought love had to be earned. So I looked at her and said, "I'm glad you understand now, but I'm not coming back." She dropped to her knees, sobbing. I didn't slam the door. I closed it quietly, gently, because for the first time, I wasn't holding on. I was choosing peace. For the man I had finally become,